My name is Randall Fernando, and it's my great pleasure to talk to you today. Today, I'm going to introduce you to two amazing guest speakers. The first is Professor Parker, who has an amazing background in terms of with leadership. In fact, Professor Parker is a professor of leadership and associate dean at the Bell faculty, and has mentored many different groups throughout Australia and New Zealand, including my own company at BHP and the Minerals Council of Australia, so many different places. It's amazing. It's really great to have you on board. Also, Professor Parker has also written a book on mentoring, which is available on Amazon. So definitely recommend you check it out. It's called Peer Coaching. Yeah, it's really good. The second of our speakers that we have today is Ali Adey, who is has found the She Mentors, which is this amazing organization that's trying to empower women in business through providing a mentoring platform, which is all about trying to connect other women mentees who are interested in learning more about business with experienced mentors. So it's really great to have you both on board with us today. Yeah, it's please welcome welcome them. So just in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, the format for this webinar for today is Polly is going to do her presentation first, and afterwards there will be a presentation from Ali, and then we'll also be having another of our members of our young alumni, Katie Lee, who'll be doing a bit of facilitation in terms of with a Q&A panel. So definitely recommend you post your questions in there. So I'll now pass it on to Polly with her presentation.
Thank you, Randall. Whoops, oh, the video stopped. Thank you very much, and I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So great to have everyone here. I can't say see you all because I can't see any of you, but it is lovely to be here and to see so many people interested in this topic of mentoring and using relationships to support careers. Whilst the title is how to create meaningful mentoring experiences, rather than adopt a strict focus on mentoring, I'm encouraging you to adopt a broader approach that I would put under the umbrella of relational learning. And I know that in a moment, Ali will be able to position the mentoring within this umbrella as well. So what is relational learning? Well, it is learning that has the support of another person or group of people. We know that this is a key aspect of leadership development. And the studies conducted at the Center for Creative Leadership in the USA show that learning happens in 3 contexts. And I'd like you all to think about what the percentage might be for each of these. So one context is learning on the job. Another context is relationships. And the third context is through formal programs. So it might be a development program. So just jot down what percentage you think that learning on the job would be, learning through relationships would be, and learning through formal programs. Well, the answer is learning on the job accounts for 70%, 70. Relationships count for 15 to 20%, and formal programs 10 to 15%. So when you're thinking about developing your own career capital, it's best if you combine all 3. So I wonder how close you were in allocating those percentages. The essence of successful learning from someone else whether it is a mentor, a peer, a supervisor, is having a high quality connection. So what is a high quality connection? Well, it's an interaction between two people that is characterized by mutuality, interdependence, and empathy. So the mutuality is I might support you in one moment or to work through one issue, and in another occasion, you might support me. So it works both ways. The interdependence means that I can move from being the person who's asking questions in order to provide guidance to the person who is being asked questions. And that agility to move from one position to another is a really critical one to develop the capability to be a really good support. So whether you're a mentor or a mentee, whether you're a peer coach or you're being coached, that agility is required. The third characteristic of high quality connections is empathy. Now, developing empathy can come in many different ways. It might be from the words that are used. It might be from the tone of the language. It might come from observing body language, which gives you a hunch as to what might be going on. It might be from honoring silences when there's no words spoken at all. And together, these three aspects form an empowering process that leads to personal growth and development. So here's another question for you. Can you think of the last time that you learned something about yourself, either personally or professionally? Think about what it was you learned. Where were you and who were you with? And can you identify if there was a high quality connection associated with that experience? Now, it really helps because that increases your own self-awareness in terms of how you learn and how you will best benefit from a relational learning experience. To ensure that there is a high quality connection, the key focus for all participants includes 7 things. The first is your personal objective. So no one is able to really help you if you don't know what you want from the interaction. So this is the first step in taking responsibility for your own learning and being accountable for it. What do you want? The second aspect is to clarify expectations at the start. So at the beginning of a session, you might say, what I would like to get from this session is the following. A third aspect is defining and coming to a shared understanding about confidentiality. What does it mean? Some people say to me, well, I can go home and share this with my partner because they don't talk to anyone else. They don't know the people who are involved, and we share everything. So to me, that's an extension of my own confidentiality. For other people, that's a complete no-no. And they might say, I'm only prepared to share things with you if you hold it personally close to your heart. The fourth aspect to consider is support. Now, this is a word that means different things to different people. Some people might feel that they're being supported if another person gives them a solution to their problems. However, that same response might feel like anything but support to someone else. They might feel as though they're being told what to do and they don't see it as supportive at all. So having a conversation at the beginning of your interaction about what support would look like can be very helpful, and it links back into clarifying expectations. It's a particular expectation that you might discuss. The fifth aspect that's very important to ensure success from an interpersonal interaction is trust. Now, we don't get trust by saying, I'm trustworthy, trust me. Most of us would test that out. And we might begin by thinking, well, I'll give the benefit of the doubt and I'll behave as if there is trust until I have a reason to see that there isn't. So that association with behaving as if can be a very powerful way of making progress, gaining traction, without having to have had a long time together to develop that trust. The sixth aspect is reciprocity. What do I give and what do I get? I often say that the best way to get something from a relationship is to not think about what you're getting from it, but to think about what you're giving to it. What is your contribution? How are you adding value? And the more that you focus on adding value, the more likely it is that you will get something back. So there is always a two-way street, but it does not always work in the way that we might expect. And the final point, the seventh point, is listening skills. Now, I've seen a lot of CVs during my career, and I don't think I have seen one that doesn't say listening skills is a strength. Often it's written like that, listening skills. But actually, that's an umbrella term that covers many different skills within it. So I would encourage you to think about how you would self-assess on different types of listening skills. So one of them might be the ability to reflect back what you've heard. Now that's different from parroting the words back. It's a deeper, more encompassing approach to taking in some of those body language cues, non-spoken things to reflect back what you think the person is expressing. Another listening skill is the ability to summarize what you've heard. So in the interaction, you might say, well, let's pause for a moment. This is what I've heard you saying. How accurate is that? So it's a sensing skill that you can check that you're on the same page. It's also a way to build trust as you go through the process. Another example of a listening skill is being able to challenge somebody, to make them really think, especially if you hear some inconsistencies in what they have said to you. So those aspects are about the process, but what are the essential relational skills that you need to build success? So this is a slightly different approach, all complementary. The first is curiosity. How curious are you? And by curious, I don't mean, can you tell me all the details? Very often when you're listening to someone else talk through their own problem, you don't need to know the detail at all, really. You're picking up on the other cues. You don't need to know who said what to whom and what happened next. How would you self-assess your ability to ask effective questions? This is perhaps the most effective way to engender success in someone else, by getting them to think deeply and effectively about their own career. This is a part of deep listening. So deep listening is about listening to what has not been said. Often people's behavior is driven by the needs that they have. So needs are very powerful, and individuals don't necessarily recognize what they are. But through astute questioning and careful observation, you might be able to think about what a need might be and put that out there for possible discussion. Another example of something that might come up through deep listening is the values that are being expressed, even though the words of those values are not being used. Very often people learn about their values when someone trips over them. So if I have a value about punctuality, for example, and someone's late, I might get really annoyed, even though I might understand the reason for the person being late. And if I step back and reflect on my response to what's happening, I might uncover a value that I hold that I wasn't even aware of. The fourth relational skill is self-management. So I used to work for Lifeline as a volunteer and developing the training programs for Lifeline counsellors. And one reason that we often turned people down from coming into the training was that they were set about solving someone else's problem. This is not a good way to help someone develop their own career success. And it requires self-management. So even if I think that I might be able to work out what the answer to your problem is or a solution for you, I have to manage myself and pause and wait and listen and not jump in. For some people, that's very difficult. I know for people with a preference for extroversion, for example, silences can be very uncomfortable, and gaps can lead them to think, oh, nothing's happening, I better jump in with something else or say something else. Actually, that behavior gets in the way. And it's a good example of learning to be aware of your own cues and learning to manage them. The other aspect of a relational skill to consider is how accountable are you? So no matter what your role, whether you're acting as a mentor, a mentee, a peer coach, you're accountable for your contribution in that. And it's very helpful to be very clear about what your role is and what you are accountable for. So I'd like to offer you a new form of relational learning, and that is peer coaching. It was helpful to see the poll taken at the beginning about how many of you have engaged in peer coaching. And the reason I like to offer you the thought of peer coaching is that it removes the power dimension that some people experience in a mentoring relationship, particularly if your mentor is also a supervisor for you. Peers can identify current situations, and we know that old patterns are not the template for future action. If we've ever had a time to prove how important that is, it's in the pandemic. Who could have thought that their experience last year would be useless to offer somebody this year? The whole context, the world has changed, and we don't know how long it's going to go on like this. But what a peer can do is identify that they're in a current similar situation, and learning to ask powerful questions can really help individuals develop insight into their own issues, their own behaviors, and what responses might really work for them. Peer coaching also enables greater participation because it doesn't require the formal matching of a mentor with a mentee. Although that I'm sure Ali will talk to you about how that can be effective as well. The final reason that I would promote peer coaching to you is that it builds internal leadership capability. Learning to ask effective questions, learning to manage yourself is a perfect way of stepping into a leadership role and enabling you to have broader influence over more people. So just to sum up, if you take one thing away from what I've said, I'd like you to assess those essential relational skills, because they really do underpin the success and outcomes from relational learning, no matter what form that takes. So choose one of those skills and see if in the next week or two, by focusing on it, you can hone that skill and improve it. For example, it might be being more genuinely curious when listening to other people. And that might involve a whole range of behaviors on your part, not just asking questions, but also stepping back, observing, thinking about patterns that you've noticed if you've worked with the person before. And then I want you to practice it. And if there's one way to embed a new learning, it's to share your experience with someone else. So I'd like you to identify who that person will be. Who are you going to share your practice experience with? Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting lots of questions from you very soon.
Thank you so much for that very interesting presentation, Professor Parker. There's a lot lot of food for thought in that presentation. I particularly really like the concept of deep listening. That's something, as well as also the concept of peer coaching in terms of thinking about talking to your peers, because it takes away that whole power differential. So those are two things for me that I'll definitely take away from your presentation. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I now will pass it on to Ali for her presentation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Polly, that was really interesting. And it definitely sounds like we're on the same page with a lot of those points. So I'm sure everyone found that really interesting. Thank you. I'm just going to share screen with you. I actually think, Izzy, if you can just allow me to share screen, it says I'm unable to while the other participant is sharing. If you can. So let me share screen with you. Okay, great. Can you see that, Izzy? Can you just give me a little message if you're all good? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So thank you, first of all, for having me along tonight to talk about mentoring. I'm clearly very passionate about this topic because I built a whole community around this, and I see the power of mentoring every single day. So for those of you who don't know much about She Mentors, we are a mentoring network for women in business, but there is one key difference, something that sets us apart from everyone else, and that is the fact that we each give back 1 hour every single month as part of our community, and we call this the Mentor Hour. So this is really unique and beautiful, and actually what Polly was talking a little bit about, which is peer mentoring, and this is what we ultimately believe as well. So we operate on the premise that everyone has something unique to offer, and we are a collective of professionals and side hustlers, coaches, entrepreneurs from all over Australia now, which is really great. And we're constantly sharing knowledge, wisdom, skills, tips in the Mentor Hour, and obviously this is happening much more online at the moment, but previously lots in person as well. We also host events, mastermind groups, and we have a podcast as well where we interview lots of inspiring women in business in both the professional space and the entrepreneurship space as well. So I wanted to frame the conversation a little bit about why mentoring is important, and Polly's done a fantastic job of that as well. And I wanted to borrow a little quote from Brené Brown. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Brené. And she says, "We don't have to do all of it alone. We were never meant to." So you don't need to go through your career or business on your own, feeling isolated, lacking clarity, not sure of the next steps or like what direction you're supposed to go in. And this is the whole reason that I created a mentoring platform in the first place. So I kept hearing the same problems over and over again. And I'd been hosting She Mentors events in Melbourne in 2017, that's when we started. And we were inviting amazing women up on stage to share their stories, the highs and the lows, and with this premise of hoping that everyone will learn from each other. But all of the women that came along to these events, these sort of high achievers, these amazing women who had lots of experience, they kept saying the same thing over and over again, that they were feeling lost and alone, they were lacking guidance, they were feeling uninspired by their managers or the people around them. There was no easy way to access mentors. They just didn't know where to find them. There were no female role models that they could easily access. And lots of them were just suffering from imposter syndrome, like I'm sure lots of you, you feel that. And these were high achievers, these are people who are already really great at what they're doing, but I could see this massive confidence gap with a lot of these women, and I felt it too as well. And there was a big fear of failure, which meant people weren't going for new opportunities, job promotions, they weren't asking for pay rises. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but it was contributing to the gender pay gap in Australia, which in 2017 was at 14%, and it's still that. At the time, there were 9 female CEOs in 2017, and I think right now there's 10 female CEOs in Australia's top 200 companies, which is pretty shocking, and less than 3% of female founders were getting funded. So this is where the idea for a mentoring platform really came about, because I wanted to create an opportunity for women to share their knowledge, use their voice, and ultimately boost their confidence. So while the She Mentors story is obviously about women, I see the huge need for mentoring in general, and particularly at a time like this. Lots of us are feeling really alone because of COVID. We're stuck at home, we're feeling isolated, and humans are innately social. We actually want to be out there and with each other. That's what it's all about. So if you've lost a job or you've been stood down at the moment, I'm sure you can relate to this. And lots of people are going through mental health issues, anxiety, depression. Polly, it's really interesting that you said you worked at Lifeline, because I was reading some stats from them, and apparently at the moment they get 90,000 calls a month from people just in Victoria since COVID. So that's a call every 30 seconds from people feeling isolated and alone. So I think these times of fear and isolation and uncertainty, this is like when we need to be pulling together as a community and strengthen our sense of being one, being a community. Mentoring is also really important for minority groups who are discriminated against or marginalised because of the colour of their skin, where they're from, their backgrounds, their abilities, even the way they speak, like an accent. And this is really important because it really adds to that, lower confidence and self-esteem that lots of people are feeling. So mentoring is so important because we really do need to lift each other up and support each other. And this is where mentoring, I think, can play a really strong part. So what are the benefits? And there's lots. And Polly touched on all of them. So I'm just going to show you a few examples of the She Mentors community and the benefits that mentoring has had for them. One of the biggest benefits we've seen in the community is confidence. We've seen our members ask for 30k pay rises. They've landed new jobs and promotions because they've had mentor hours with each other. We're seeing people just getting together to bounce ideas, talking strategy, sharing metrics. It's really great just to tap into someone from a different industry or perhaps different company and just exchange that value and be like, what are you guys doing? How is that going to work for you? This has been a really valuable element of sort of peer mentoring. We've learned new skills and taken risks. So lots of mentor hours are about upskilling and checking in, learning new things, putting yourselves out there. We've had pep talks on our lunch hour. This happens a lot. Often you need a sounding board, someone to talk through something with you. And Polly mentioned that it's about listening and understanding and trying to help someone navigate their way through difficult situations. We've juggled parenthood. So I'm a new mum. I've got a 13-month-old at the moment. She's actually the one in the pram at the bottom of the screen. I really struggled, as being a business owner and a new mum, and it really helped me to know there were other women, the new mums and mums who've been around for a lot longer than me, to help me go through that particular stage of my journey. And we've overcome our fears, and again, this comes down to confidence. So 2 of our members here, Lisa is putting out live LinkedIn videos, and Jill was going up on stage to pitch for the first time at one of our Melbourne events. So big one. And then finally we started working together, collaborating, offering each other jobs, appearing on each other's podcasts, and this is a big thing, I think, the opportunities that come about. So just to sort of summarize some of the benefits taken from that, there are really 3 that I see as being huge benefits of mentoring. And the first one obviously is confidence. You have the confidence to take the right next steps, whether that's a new job or a promotion, whether it's speaking opportunities. And interestingly, what we've seen is the huge boost in confidence for the mentor. So for the one that's actually giving the advice, and Polly mentioned this too, it really validates that you do know what you're talking about and that you do have a lot to offer. And I think, you know, for the imposters out there, which happen to be a lot of our community and a lot of women in business, this has been a bit of a breakthrough, and one of the biggest benefits, I think, of being part of a mentoring network. And it's what I personally really love as well. The second thing is perspective. So I touched on it a little bit before, but, you know, bouncing ideas, talking strategy with people you wouldn't normally cross paths with, getting that alternative point of view. It's really, really important and really, really effective. So it's important to surround yourselves with people who are different, who view the world through a different lens, whether that's an industry, whether it's race, religion, experience level. You know, that just gives you so much more to work with. It opens your eyes to new things you hadn't thought of before. And it's proven that companies benefit, you know, they perform better when there is a diverse workforce. There's more sales, more customers, higher profit margins. And we believe this to be the same for mentoring as well. So whether you've got 1 year or 40 years of experience, I think you can offer something really valuable. You have your own unique story. And this is why we actively encourage our mentors and mentees to be booking lots of different mentor hours every single month with different people to expand their horizons. And then the last one there is opportunities, which I touched on. There's a quote that I really love, and it's each person you meet is a new door to a different world. And this is absolutely true for your career or business. The opportunities that present themselves because of your network and the people that you're associating with are amazing. And these opportunities don't just come about because, you know, if you're just sitting at home on your own. In fact, I was recommended for this webinar through one of our members, Cheryl, who put me forward for this. You know, like if I wasn't part of a mentoring network, I wouldn't be seeing these kind of opportunities. So those are kind of the benefits. And just sort of an overview on like how to find a mentor. Like I know lots of you here are probably thinking, it sounds pretty good. How can I reach out and find a mentor? Well, the first thing, there's two really ways to do it. And I think the first one is reach out to your own network. First of all, start there. It's very difficult to reach out to someone completely cold. You know, go after someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, can you mentor me? I think it's important to find people in your existing network that you already have a relationship with. So it could be a previous manager, a boss, a friend who's actually further along than you are in your chosen career or business. And Polly mentioned this too, like make your objectives super clear. So what are your expectations of the session? You know, is this like an ongoing mentoring agreement that you're asking for? Is it a one-off? Is it pro bono? Are you going to pay them? Maybe pay them in coffee or lunches or whatever. But what I found is that people are really happy to help as long as they know what's expected of them and as long as they feel confident that they can help you. If you don't have a network, then I think it's a great idea to join a mentoring group. It can be a program, it can be a group. There are loads around. I know that the University of Queensland has a great mentoring program they're going to talk to you about. She Mentors is about sort of that on-demand mentoring. So it's more of a community as well. So there's lots of members there who can help you with different stages of your career or business. And I think the benefit of joining a group is that it takes the fear away of being rejected. Because I think one of the biggest reasons you don't reach out to people is that you are afraid of being rejected, right? So if you join a group like She Mentors, then you'll know that everyone that you connect with on there is there to mentor each other. So you're not going to have that fear of failure. There are obviously other types of mentoring where you get matched with someone and you have that ongoing relationship. And to be honest, I think it's complete personal preference of what you prefer. And I think all of them are so beneficial. And if you don't have a mentor or a network that's there to support you, I feel like you're missing out. Okay, so the final thing I just want to say is the secret to a successful mentoring relationship for me is psychological safety. So this is the reason that mentoring is so powerful, because it's that safe space that it creates. And Polly touched on this again. With the relationships that you've seen or the photos you've seen of She Mentors just you can see those solid connections have been made. And it's because, you know, you spend an hour with someone and you're sharing your struggles and you're being vulnerable, and you're talking about those things that sometimes you don't want to say, you know, out loud. And you are going to build a space of trust. And while we are a diverse community, we're bound by the same purpose, which is to help each other succeed. And this automatically creates that safe space. So in my opinion, mentoring is not the place to kind of dictate, this is what you need to do, step-by-step instructions. It's about empowering that person to make the right decisions on their own. And this builds their confidence. And with this, those amazing opportunities start to emerge. So that one to me is the sort of secret to success, is you need to be finding people that you trust in order to establish a mentoring relationship. And finally, I'd love to connect with all of you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can search my name, Ali Adey. On Instagram at She Mentors. We have a company page on LinkedIn as well called She Mentors. And obviously, if you're interested in joining, you can jump over to shementors.com.au. So thank you so much for having me. I'm open to questions if you have any.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Ali. It was really great to see that there's real case examples of how the benefits of mentoring in your mentees' lives. Yeah, it's really inspiring to see that. So now, just to give a bit of background, we're now going to be launching into our Q&A panel. We have with us Katie Lee, who is one of our fellow board members on the UQ alumni. Katie, would you like to give a bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Lee. I graduated back to 2016. My major is tourism, hospitality, and event management. I'm currently a manager of the student accommodation here. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, so Katie will be facilitating our Q&A panel for today.
Cool, lovely.
So, thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reno. And thanks again to Professor Parker and Ali for your amazing presentations. I just want to remind everyone, please feel free to pop in any of your questions into Q&A bar. So we will get your question answered as many as we can. And to get the ball rolling, I would like to ask a question for Professor Parker. I really, really love the idea of peer-to-peer coaching, because you don't have to mention the power dynamic as you mentioned in your presentation. However, how can I navigate that peer-to-peer relationship? For example, if I want to reach out to someone, how do I draft my first request messages?
Well, thank you. I think it's a good question. And as Ali identified earlier, there's so much that we agree on. That's really very, very reinforcing, I think, for people listening. That one of the reasons people are fearful about reaching out is that they will be rejected. And I think this is an opportunity to be really courageous. And you can start by asking, you know, some of your friends. I strongly believe that when we have an issue that we want to talk through with someone, we have an idea in our head already about who might be helpful from the people we already know. So I think that's the place to start. And one of the things that does is build confidence. And as you build the confidence to ask someone you know, then it gives you more courage to ask someone who you may not know so well. And again, extending out, developing your networks, joining other groups, puts you in touch with people. And then a simple question like, well, I've heard about, you know, peer coaching. I wondered whether you would be interested in trying that out with me. can be, you know, a good way to start.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think just getting that confidence is really important. Like you both mentioned, sometimes we just have the fear of being rejected because it's really not a good feeling. You were like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, but actually it's not. Maybe that person is just not available during that time. So yeah, thank you. And for Ali, actually, I really want to ask you, what's the benefit of having a same gender mentorship? Yeah, because you started as a she mentors, and I think it's a really great opportunity to empower women. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So we created She Mentors obviously because of the lack of female leaders in Australia, and that kind of sense of not being able to see female role models and leaders. And I mean, I've worked with companies where it's just like all men sitting in the boardroom, and I know that's the case for a lot of corporates as well. So I think it's important that women are able to see each other progressing and see that you can be up there in the boardroom, or you can run your own business and you can have a family. And I think by having other women that are there to showcase that and to share their experiences really empowers you and makes you think that you can do it too.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually really looking for any of those groups that I can join, particularly only for women, because I haven't found any in Queensland. Yeah.
Join She Mentors.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely,
yeah,
definitely.
We've got people from all over Australia now, which is really nice.
Yes.
But also with the question that you asked Polly as well, I think you know, the fear of getting rejected. I think one thing I would say is don't just reach out to one person. If you don't hear back, that's it. You know, you never reach out again. Like I would just sort of reach out to a few people at the same time, and you know, your likelihood is going to be higher if you reach out to more people. And I think the other thing is we have to be okay with getting rejected and getting no's. Like if you're not getting a no in anything, then you're probably not putting yourself out there enough. You're not getting uncomfortable. And this is the whole idea, is that we need to be stepping out of our comfort zone much more than we do. So I think it's a really interesting topic, the fear of failure. And I do a lot of reading on this, and I just think that you need to kind of be okay with the fact that, yeah, you probably are going to get rejected. I get rejected a lot. I reach out to people to speak at She Mentors events and don't hear back or get a no, and that's okay. That's okay. I'll just keep going, keep plodding along. So it's, it's an interesting one.
That's cool. So I would like to take some questions from the floor. So I have a question here from KU, excuse me if I couldn't pronounce your name correctly. So the question is, what are strategies to find a mentor who is relevant to our experience or learning? What are things to look for in a mentor? So Professor Parker, would you like to take this one?
Sure. I think what I would hope people would want is someone to challenge their thinking. I like the way Ali talked about perspective. And what often happens, I think, is people in an industry think, oh, I need someone else in this industry because they understand it. And certainly they do understand the industry, but very often someone from a different industry can ask a question that will stimulate thinking for you. And their experience will lead them to ask a question. So already you've got a different perspective coming in. And I think that's very helpful. So challenging your thinking, getting someone to think differently about what the issue is. And it really taps into one of the other questions that I noticed there about, is it good to have more than one mentor? I think a range of people is very helpful indeed, not only because different individuals will tap into their perspective and their experience, but you want different, different kinds of responses at different times. So there's a career consultant in Boston called Priscilla Clayman, and she talks about developing your own board of directors. So if you think about who would you invite onto your board of directors, and it doesn't mean that you ask the whole board the same question, but at different times you might ask or reach out to a different person on that board. So you can have people in your industry on the board. You might have a family member who knows you very well. You might have a friend you might invite someone who you don't know very well, but you've seen speaking. And it also gives you a bit of a language to reach out. I'm developing my own board of directors to enable me to navigate my career. Would you be interested in being a participant on my board of directors? And then being very clear, well, about, you know, how much time that involves. I think that's a good way. So think about your board of directors, and yeah, think about that work of Priscilla Clayman.
Ooh. Lovely. So there's another questions. This participant saying they actually reach out to, they have mentors, but they find out their mentors are quite time poor with their schedules, which is completely understandable. But what's the best way to engage with mentors while being respectful of their time and their commitments? So Ali, I think you will have lots of say in that one.
Yeah, so I think that's the tricky part, reaching out to people and trying to establish whether they have time to mentor you. So I think that's why it helps to reach out to people in your network that you already know. You can suss out their personal situation, if they've got kids, if they're in lockdown like me, and stage 4 and literally have no free time. So I think it really helps to start with your network first of all. And I think that the only thing you can really do is state your objectives, be super flexible, work around them, put their time first. So when people book the mentor hour on the She Mentors platform, we always say, you know, be respectful of the mentor's time. So if you can see that the time's ticking over past an hour, as the mentee, it's your job to kind of wrap things up, because you have to be respectful of that person's time. So I think you can only be as flexible as you possibly can. If they can only meet at 9 p.m. at night, that's what you do, and just put it out there in terms of your objectives, what you want to achieve, and say, you know, this doesn't have to be an ongoing thing. I would love to meet you just once to pick your brain over a coffee, and I'll shout the coffee. You know, so many people, a one-off mentoring session, so many people will say yes to you.
Yeah, definitely. And what I found out is for some really like busy people, or they have really tight schedules, sometimes meeting them in the morning before they go to work actually is a good way, because everyone need a coffee to start off their day. Yeah.
We all need lots of coffee. And also online, you know, it's so much easier now. Like I think with COVID, people are just, it's second nature to jump online. And I think that's made it even easier for our mentors and mentees to meet, and you know, you don't have to travel into the city, and you can catch up with someone in Brisbane. Or so I think it's great for that. And you can suggest that, you know, if it's easier, I could just jump on a quick phone call with you if that's what works for you.
Yeah, also a question from Kavya. She actually also mentioned, because of COVID, everything seems to be online, like the mentorship or mentor meeting will be conducted online. And her question is how to make sure they still remain the same quality of mentorship if everything will be operated online. So Professor Parker, do you have any suggestions for that one?
I think it is easier if you already have met the person to maintain the relationship online and to connect in. I think one of the dangers at the moment, certainly in education, is people are quite Zoom weary. And so, you know, managing the time and getting an appropriate time is useful. But the connections are very similar. I think perhaps you have to work harder on Zoom to pick up the non-verbal cues. It's much harder to read the body language and, you know, those other observable behavior patterns that I talked about earlier. But the essence of developing the high quality connection is the same, whether you're doing it face-to-face or online. And even if we weren't in COVID, or if we're thinking post-COVID, mixing it up is a really useful way to go. It might also depend on the availability of the other person or the people that you're working with. So it's good to check that out. That's part of managing the expectations, being realistic at the start and seeing what you can be explicit about, so people do have a shared understanding of what you're entering into.
Oh, yeah. So because of the time limit, I will just take another questions. I will take Jessica's question. Her question is, As a peer coaching or a mentor, what's the best way or a top tip to start asking better questions? I would like to improve this skill. So I would like to invite Ali and Professor Parker just to give your top tip.
To ask better questions?
Yes, correct.
I mean, listening is one of the biggest things. And I think, as Polly's already mentioned, when someone starts talking to you in a mentor hour, there's a lot of things that are unsaid. And I think you can judge that by body language. And I often do quite a lot of research before a mentor hour about their background and their career or their business and see if I can add to them. So I would just say that listen deeply, which is stealing Polly's answer probably. But I think that is one of the best things that you can do, and reserve your judgment straight away. Don't jump in, and just be open to listening and taking their cues.
Well, Ali's given a very good answer. I think one thing that I might add to that is please be sure that you don't ask closed questions. And one thing I encourage people to do when they're first learning to be a peer coach is to only ask questions. So if you have an interaction with someone else and you only allow yourself to ask questions, not to make a statement, not to give a comment, not to give an observation, you very quickly learn which questions enable the other person to give deeper responses. And keeping a list of them is a really good idea. You know, what are your own top 5 questions? So you might ask something like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then that is a trigger for people to be able to talk through what their responses are. So I think experiment with different questions and practice. It's a way to hone all of these skills, is to practice. So perhaps that could be everybody's homework for the rest of the week, is to practice asking better questions, and then get feedback on your questions. Which questions challenged you the most? Which questions made you really think about what was happening?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for Dr. Parker and Ali, and for your amazing presentation and Q&A session. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all of your question answered, but we will get back to you by email. As Ali briefly mentioned, we actually have a mentorship programs that designed by UQ. It's called Alumni to Alumni. Randall, would you like to share that screen?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cool. So we call it A2A, is a UQ online mentoring platform helping you to connect with your global alumni community. So you can be a mentor or be a mentee or a peer coaching, or a combination of 3 if you like, depending on where you are at in your career and where your goals are. So I highly recommend all of you today to sign up for this one. And also, if you're interested in Ali's She Mentors, please feel free to join her platform as well. And another one, last but not least, don't forget to join us for our most popular UQ Young Alumni series, Get Finance Fit, on the 14th of October. The last series will be focusing on investment during current climate. The registration is open now. We look forward to seeing all of you at the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please complete 2-minute survey after this webinar. It will really help us to shape our future events. If you would like to add Ali or Professor Parker, feel free to add them, find them on LinkedIn. And if you are interested in Professor Parker's research, and she will share afterwards as well. This recording will be available for the next 1 or 2 weeks. We will send it to you guys by email. Thank you so much, and see you next time.